Please unmute yourself. We can hear some noise in the background. We are hoping that with continued discussions on this issue, we'll be able to change the negative narratives for policy interventions as well as programmatic actions as well on the special needs of older persons, changing the stereotyping. So, and we'll, to help me unpack these issues today, this afternoon, I have lined up quite a few panelists. Thank you so much, each one of you, for joining in. We hope that, we'll be able to raise awareness, join forces, and add to the advocacy efforts to change the situation. In my language, there is a saying that may our later years be better than our earlier years. So that is the prayer for, that's our prayers, and which is also one of the reasons why we're doing what we are doing. Let me go right into bringing on our guests. I have online, hopefully, representatives from different organizations across the globe. We are going to start from grassroots up, bottom-top approach. So I would like to, before I go into introducing the guests, there will be a few rounds of questions. And probably to save time, I would put all the questions out there. And then each of our panelists will probably touch on it as they go on. So first of all, let me go down straight to Nigeria. I'd like to introduce Senator Darlington Eze-Ajoku. Are you here, Doctor? Dr. Eze? Hello? Please unmute yourself.
Please. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Eze is a current, is a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He's also the president for Coalition of Societies for the Rights of Older Persons in Nigeria. And today he will be talking about the care for older persons, both at home and in special facilities, including hospitals. And then still in Nigeria, I would like to welcome on board Dr. Ogugwa Osiogu. Dr. Ogugwa, are you online? Dr. Ogugwa is a consultant physician and a geriatrician heading the geriatrics unit at the Department of Medicine National Hospital in Abuja. She's also the deputy chair and acting chair of the Medical Advisory Committee at the National Hospital in Abuja. She will be talking to us on age-friendly health systems and preventive measures for healthy aging. Before I go to regional, I want to bring in somebody who is global. She'll be talking about, bringing to us the gender perspectives of aging. As you all know, aging is cross-cutting. So she neither falls into the category of grassroots or, in terms of geographical location. She's going to talk about, a broad subject. And this is Laurie Ruiz. She's a lawyer and a political scientist by training. She's currently based here in Geneva with the UN Women's, at the UN Women's Geneva Liaison Office, where she's a focal point for women's economic empowerment. And then I'll go right to the regional level now and introduce to you Ms. Roslyn Kihumba. She's the coordinator for Help Age Africa in Kenya, based in Kenya. Ms. Kihumba has a wide range of experience in international development. Before I go in, Roslyn, do you want to say hello to us so that we know you are there?
Hello, everyone. Here is Roslyn. Thank you.
Okay. I wonder why That thing is not showing whoever is speaking. Then I now come back to Geneva, where we have Ms. Berger. She's a scientist, a researcher based at the University of Geneva here and Lausanne. She's an expert on different international public health issues, most especially aging and pandemics. She's the president of the Geneva International Network on Aging, also known as GINA. And then finally, I would like to introduce to you my very good friend, Sylvia Perel. Sylvia is the chair for the NGO Association Committee on Aging in Geneva. She's a representative to the UN for the International Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse, as well as the International Longevity Center Global Alliance. Sylvia, are you here? Would you like to say hello to us?
Hello, BC. Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Sylvia. So in the order with which I called the different names, I would like to call on the speakers to come on board. So starting with Senator Eze. Senator, thank you so much. May I quickly repeat the modalities, the first, the 3 rounds of questions that we would expect from you. Your main speaking theme, which is the care for older persons, both at home and in special facilities, including hospitals. And then we would also like you to touch on how some of the challenges that you've identified could be resolved. Yeah, those are the 2 questions we'd like you to touch on. So thank you so much and welcome, Dr. Eze.
Thank you very much. I want to appreciate the organizers for including me, and I also want to appreciate Dr. Osiebu. We were in another webinar yesterday on behalf of the Medical Women Association of Nigeria, the National Senior Members Forum. And let me just crack a joke. I don't know why I've been singled out. Yesterday, I participated in a webinar with 5 ladies, and I went first. Today, there are about 6 ladies, and I'm going first again. But I'm glad that Dr. Charles is here to rescue me in this situation. So I want to thank all of you. I want to thank all of you for this opportunity. I want to ask for permission that for the purpose of this discussion, you will allow me to use Nigeria as my case study. Older persons are not a homogeneous group, but diverse in different living and health conditions. Of course, we know some are wealthy, some are poor, some are strong, some are weak, some are frail, some are sick, all sorts of conditions of older persons. Therefore, the care of older persons, therefore, can be a daunting task depending on the class they belong. Again, there are no special security protections and safety nets in Nigeria for older persons. So you can begin to appreciate what the discussion would look like. Therefore, the model for care will be difficult to create. All I will do is to try to look at the broad care types as per the topic. I am 73 years old, and I have a mother who is about 102, and I have siblings who are older persons themselves. I must say that in looking at the 2 broad care types that I will be discussing, we have practiced the traditional care as opposed to the institutional care. And the 2 broad discussions I will be having is traditional care and institutional care. In Nigeria, the traditional care by families and children is the vogue. This intergenerational bonding, however, is suffering currently from easily available mobility, urbanization, migration, and unemployment. It is tradition for older persons to live with their children, their cousins, their daughter and or sons-in-laws. By this method, they can be guaranteed food, shelter, and some medical coverage. This line of support is available to older persons with children. But there are older persons without children, and there are older persons in humanitarian camp. For these, life is a nightmare, and many die very unhappy. I want to say here, it is sad for an older person to die hungry or without care. But looking at the traditional care method, there are major problems that I see with it. And I will just enumerate a few of the problems. One is poor knowledge by carers of issues concerning aging and how to respond to it. Those who care for older persons may not have any experience how old people feel. There is poor communication output that leads to dementia, as old persons are no longer listened to. So they stop talking and therefore develop mental health issues. Isolation and abuse due to lack of carers or unintended abusive carers. There are wrong choices made for older persons in the area of food, dressing, association, and so on. In fact, in many cases, there are no real-time attention by carers to the older person's needs. In some families, everybody's business is nobody's business. This results in abandonment. There are untimely administration of the older person's drugs by unprofessional carer. Asked to give them their drugs at this time, they don't care. They just believe that they should give them the drugs anytime they feel like. Sometimes older persons in many African countries are forced to babysit. Single mothers easily send their babies to the older persons in the family house. This increases the responsibility of the older person and cost of living, resulting probably in malnutrition or stress and sometimes depression by the older woman. There's instability and emotional stress in the home, as not all the family members would like to have an older person living with them, or in some cases, two older persons living with them. And oftentimes you find that the older person is relocated from his original abode to a relative's home for convenience of care, sometimes in the city, and the older person is very, very unhappy. There's need for possible modification of homes to accommodate the older person when they arrive, and there could be cost implications. And where they are not moved, and you find them carers, you find that there could be high turnover of carers. While the older people are getting used to one carer, the person will leave and abandon them. So you find that this happens regularly. There is possible low level of activity due to lack of inclusiveness by living with people. Your relations, they won't allow the old person move around, do this, they restrict them. And they are not doing this intentionally, they're just to protect the older person. And this sometimes leading to a sedentary lifestyle, which adds its own problems. So you find that the traditional home care is rich with all these problems, but it has some benefits. And some of the benefits I will mention. One is that most times older persons live with children, family, and with children and their family, whom they have known for a very long time, and that gives them a sense of belonging. Abuse of older persons and abandonment is reduced when you live with family and they look after you. And the older person can experience genuine love and can, you know, they will really look after, oh, my mother, my grandmother. That's some of the benefits with it. Where the older person is a primary carer to grandchildren, it gives them a sense of responsibility and also a feeling of being useful and needed once more. They don't see themselves as useless. They are looking after children. The intergenerational synergy or bond is important for the psychosocial growth of children, grandchildren, when they're at home with grandmother and with old parents. And it provides means of transferring tradition and knowledge across generations. The older people are able to teach the younger ones. Today is being threatened by urban migration for greener pastures, children moving on to begin their own lives and family. And sometimes you could have death of a spouse, or someone could have a divorce and it has its own consequences. The care of older persons may now become the responsibility of hired carers, depending on who is employed and made to care. Many older persons experience hell at the hand of some of these hired carers. Some carers abuse the older persons. They steal from them, threaten them, blackmail them, and because they are not trained, there is the issue of poor communication, wrong choices. Denial may be experienced by the older person. The annoying part is the poor care by these hired carers, who may aggravate the health issues and problems of the aging person. When an older person is living with a carer who is daily upsetting them, it aggravates their health conditions. Strong older persons with traditional care setting do not suffer as much as sick and frail older persons. When people are stronger and they can do things, but when you are weak and sick, that's when the older persons get a lot of abuse. Healthy older persons will have capacity, even if they are poor, to still do a lot of things for themselves or give effective direction to carers or servants or maids. For example, as an older person, my wife and I still live in our traditional home. We have an empty nest, but we live with a maid who does all the domestic chores. Like I told you, my senior sister is an older person. She lives in her traditional home, but with many grandchildren. She is responsible for their upkeep. That, of course, I've mentioned it could create stress and malnutrition if she hasn't got enough money. My mother, who is about 102 years old, lives now with my youngest sister and her family. She is usually alone when all the young people have gone to work. Lunch pack is made available to her before my sister goes out for her business. This in itself is not good enough, but because it is difficult to get housemaids nowadays in some areas, it is the best arrangement for now. The abandonment of older persons is still an issue yet to be addressed by government through the provision of daycare centers for older persons. Let me give you an example. A member of our association who is fairly comfortable has hired a maid for her mother. And I want to tell you that for 5 days, the mother did not eat. Not because there was no food, but the woman was so upset, she refused to eat for 5 days. And this maid, who also has her own children, when the woman refuses to eat, they just carry the food. Mama doesn't want to eat, they will eat the food. For 5 days, this woman almost died until somebody told the daughter what was going on. These are the kind of things older persons can suffer when they live with hired maid. Care for older persons who need long-term care continues to be a challenge, where primary care, usually children or even hired care, wish for the death of the older person so that they can be relieved of the burden of care. So you see, traditional care will continue to be a problem until viable alternatives are available, such as assisted living for the poor and assisted living for those who can afford paid services and nursing homes for the sick older persons. The way forward for traditional home care is targeted social security or incentives to the older person and their career and their carer on a community-based structure, as it is done by a tribe in the northern part of Nigeria. There is a northern part of Nigeria where, they practice what they call talca. It's a form of designated care. The older person is given to someone in that family, and the person is supported to be able to look after that older person. Now, that's my take on traditional care. Let's look at the other form of care, the institutional care, in the form of assisted living homes, nursing homes, home care, hospice, and hospital care. In Nigeria and in many African countries, the level of care for older persons are still facing many challenges. Geriatric care is still at its rudimentary level in a country even like Nigeria, where a population of over 190 million people, there are less than 10 qualified geriatric doctors to cater for the diseases of older persons, and not many gerontologists to cater for their psychological problems. We are glad that one of those geriatric doctors will be speaking after me, and in fact, in the capital city of Abuja, she is the only one. My observations with institutional cares are as follows. Young doctors do not really understand the real situation with older persons' clinical psychology. They lack empathy and patience with the older persons. They see older persons as normal patients and believe that the issues are single cause. But an older person can be suffering from 3 or 4 or 5 things at the same time. Many caregivers in this sector are not trained, non-experts taking the place of experts. Often you find auxiliary or registered nurses acting as gerontologists. There is poor communication between older persons and these nurses. There's one of these nursing homes in Abuja. A nurse refused to attend to one lady in the home for days because the male nurse felt the old woman doesn't like him and he doesn't want to talk. So you find that these communication issues are a problem between carers and older persons. Many carers do not know how to pet or encourage tired, frail older persons to look forward to another day. Many see their role as a job and no passion for the older person. In some hospitals, nurses insist that the older person must be on admission with a relation who will look after their needs because they just cannot be bothered. Most facilities are not age-friendly. Also, there is a fear that the older person, while waiting to see a doctor, may be infected in such environments due to their low immunity, with long waiting hours to see doctors. The main problem with institutional care is that it's very expensive without government intervention, as is in Nigeria currently. Many of the institutional care facilities, as earlier mentioned, are not up to standard, and they are not currently regulated by the government agencies in the states. They are also not adequate and currently driven by profit motives by those who establish them, as government is doing little to establish any. For institutional care to thrive in Nigeria or anywhere, for example, there shall be more training. There should be more training for personnel. More resource centers and awareness creation will be needful. Policies need to be created to standardize and supervise those facilities. They have to become affordable and less profit-oriented, and yet with service and love for humanity as their core values. I will just define the kind of institutional cares that are available in Nigeria. I'll just take 2 minutes to do that. One, you have the nursing homes, a place for long-term care. Sometimes it could be short respite care for older persons with recreational facilities for interaction, ready and available health care with professional carers, doctors, registered nurses. And we have just, in Abuja, the capital city of Nigeria, we just have only one. And it could be for profit or non-profit, but it is quite expensive to run. Hospice, home for terminally ill people with less than a few months to live. There is only one in the federal capital where I live, which is the capital of Nigeria, and it is run by the Catholic sisters, and it is non-profit, you know, and also it is quite expensive to maintain it.
Senator, I would have to cut you short there. I'm very sorry. You can come back around when we get to the question and answer time.
That's good.
Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. I love the idea of the traditional care. I also have older parents, a 94 and a 91-year-old. And I know what you're talking about the children not being around as a result of migration and all that. Before I go on, I would like to introduce somebody else, which I should have introduced when we started, and that is Dr. Senesi. Dr. Charles Senesi is also one of the co-sponsors of this program, is heading a consortium of a network of researchers and medical professionals in Switzerland. He will be rounding up the meeting for us. And then I feel maybe I should also remind everyone that because we have very limited time, we would like to stick to our presentation time, and that is 10 minutes per speaker. I know it's a lot, it's very short with all these brilliant presentations that you have prepared, but I hope some of it will come up in the question and answer time, the discussion time. So on this note, I would like to invite Dr. Ogugwa Osiogu. I hope she's here now. Ogugwa, are you here? Okay, without so that we don't waste much time, let me come back to the regional level. At the regional level, still on the continent, I would like to invite Rosalind to share with us her views on changes that needed to be made to change the negative narratives of aging, especially the stereotyping and inequalities. Rosalind? Hello?
Hello, thank you very much, BC, for inviting me and helping to be part of this insightful and very useful platform where we elevating the discussion around the issues of older person, and we very well know that the issues of older person remains quite low in terms of the conversations that are ongoing around public policy, be it in SDGs, in national development plans, in regional and sub-regional, but even worse within sub-national and sub-regional, for instance, in the ECOWAS, in SADC and East Africa. And these are places that we really need to put our efforts there, because one of the things that we really need to change, and I will just go right into the topic, is around making sure that we are starting our discussion of older people around making sure that people really understand that older people have the same rights or equal rights like any other population group. And that means that we must ensure that these human rights are respected and promoted. That meaning that then our older persons must never be left out in any public conversation that is ongoing at any other level, be it at local level, international level. And for us to really change this is for us, especially the civil society, any person that is responsible for older person at a national level, at a regional level and global level, to really heighten the awareness of the rights of older person, but also to invest a lot of time around building the skills and knowledge that is needed to propel the integration of our older person or understanding of the issues of older person, and as well as lobbying. And it would really be good for us to put more efforts in engaging particularly the key institutions, that is our member states. In Africa, we would concentrate with in the African Union architecture, that is the African Union, the Banjul Commission, the parliamentary, Pan-African Parliament or parliamentarian structures, the UN structures, so that we can really build this political will that is currently missing in Africa, so that this, if we are able to build or galvanize this political will, it can really help us now accelerate the policy actions that are needed for the various public institutions to act on issues around older person, but also this would also help us in terms of increased allocation of resources that is really important in terms of developing the human resource that is currently missing, and also in terms of making sure that the policies that are in place or that are needed to be in place are actually developed and implemented. And as I had mentioned earlier on, that we need to put our efforts, because at national level, let's say at capital and at AU level, some level of understanding has already been built, but we still need more concentration at sub-national and local level, but also sub-regional levels, so that they can also get to be aware and also start integrating issues of older persons in their strategies and policies. The other aspect that area that we need to concentrate on is also our development partners and donors. At the moment, we are seeing that World Bank, Africa Development Bank is also increasing their level of engagement on the agenda, and it would really be good for us to focus there, so that because they are the people who really change the narrative in development, and since aging is a development issue, they can also help us now gain more traction on aging, so that more member states can start acting. At a community level and family level, we know that this is where most of the stereotypes begin, and this is also where neglect, abuse, and violence of our older persons are happening, particularly in the areas of land-related issue, property, the ongoing accusation of witchcraft. we really need to put a lot of effort so that the community and society appreciate the older person, and for them to understand that our older person are important as any other member of society, so that we can really create a society that values, or which a society that is truly intergenerational, where each member of society is valued and they are able to contribute, and they are supported where they are vulnerable. For instance, in terms of ensuring that the care system is there to support those that need, for instance, long-term care and palliative care system that is needed there. And that would really propel that issue around transfer of knowledge, but also just making sure that everybody is contributing. Another area that needs to change is in terms of also ensuring that our older person really understands, they really understand that they have their rights, and for us to be able also to ensure that we have given them the capacity, and also we are organizing them so that they are able to claim, challenge, and also increase their participation in the various conversations and decision-making processes that are happening at their environment, at national level and every other level. But most importantly is to ensure that their voices is actually sustained, and it's well coordinated, supported by the civil society. And here we are also seeing that even the civil societies that are supporting older person, they really need a lot of support so that they can also increase their capacity on how to organize and build the capacity of older person, but also how to engage the various public discourse, because that is the only way that we can ensure that the voices, but also the technical expertise that the civil societies, society organizations have accumulated over time can transfer to the public, or let's say to the government. More so, we really need to build allies, ally or coalitions with other civil society organizations who are dealing with the intersecting issues. For instance, women, we know that almost 23% of women are older women, and there's need for us to really join hands with them and really lobby them to integrate our older person. And if it's children organization, we really need to also put the narrative around the issue that Senator Eze had talked about, that they are really burdened with care around their grandchildren, and they really need a lot of support. One other aspect that really needs a lot of support and investment by the civil society, the academia, the government, is around the availability of data, because this is a major challenge for everyone, especially in Africa, to convince, for instance, why the issues of older person are relevant, let's say in demographic dividend, that our older people are really contributing a lot to that. There are also issues around whether the methodologies that are being used in the data management system is up to the game around collecting data for older person, but also the level of analysis to ensure that data disaggregation and reporting are done on regular and administrative data. And one thing that we have lacked in Africa is that no country so far has done a situational analysis for older person. And this means that we really do not understand the situation of our older person. And this is an area that can really support us change the narrative of older person. One other area that we could that could really help us change the narrative is the issue of us organizations or ministries leading older people's issue to ensure that we are moving with other sectors so that we can move in using a coordinated mechanism where we are promoting multi-sectorial coordination mechanism so that we are moving with everybody, because everybody, for the rights of older people to be attained, every sector must integrate our older person. And that's really important for us at regional level and at national level to use this mechanism. And we know that in countries where they have done this, for instance, in Mauritius, in some parts of South Africa, and now in Ethiopia, things are really moving fast in terms of integrating the older people's issues, but also in terms of putting in place frameworks that are needed, legal and policy framework for our older person. Just two areas that I would also want to emphasize is around having impactful and sustained conversations around aging and older persons issue. And I know the last 1 year we have seen quite a bit of that, and this is what we really need to sustain over the period, but also the need for us to have maybe very sustained, sustained technical support to various structures from continental, from global to national level and subnational level. And in conclusion, for us to be able to change the negative narrative, a key driver to this is just to ensure that older persons are fully integrated in families, communities, and society. And for us to be able to create an environment where age-specific frameworks and older persons are mainstreamed so that they can really enjoy their social, economic, political, and cultural rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rosaline. We quite appreciate all the dimensions you brought on board, especially the issue of data to integrate the needs of the older person. Of course, political will. I think that's something that cuts abroad all social development issues on our continent. We really must be grateful to COVID for bringing the spotlight on the issues of the older person. At least now it has shown the discrepancies in the political system, in the medical, the health sector, to know what is at stake, what has not been done. It's brought a lot of visibility. For that, I think we are thankful. Now I would like to bring in Laurie to talk about something, the gender perspectives of aging. There's so many issues that surround aging. There's a gender divide, that cuts across social, political, including technological. Laurie, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Visi. And it's a pleasure to be part of this discussion on behalf of UN Women. For those who might not know us, UN Women is the UN agency that's responsible for gender equality and women's empowerment. And when we talk about aging, there is a really strong gender dimension. Of course, globally, women live longer on average than men, so the majority of our older populations are women. But also, older women actually face additional aging challenges because of their gender. And this is what I want to touch upon today. So first of all, women usually face great economic hardship Because of a lifetime of economic disadvantages, we know that they have less opportunities in terms of education, which leads to less opportunities in terms of employment. When you couple this with additional care responsibilities, women end up with lower incomes and so less savings in their old age. To illustrate this, in China, for example, poverty rates among older women are 3 to 4 times higher than among older men. And even within the European Union, older women are 37% more likely than men to live in poverty. Also, in some countries, women have less access to land, housing, and other assets, sometimes by law and sometimes because of cultural norms. So in India, for example, 60% of older women have no valuable assets in their name. So as a consequence, women are much more vulnerable to the social, health, and economic disadvantages associated with old age. There's also an issue with pension systems that fail to produce equal outcomes for women. In most countries, women are far less likely to receive any old age pension. So if we look at some regional examples, in Spain, 47% only of women receive a pension compared to 97% of men. If we move to Latin America, in El Salvador, only 10% of women compared to 32% of men. And if we move to Africa, in the Republic of Congo, only 5% of women compared to 42% of men. In cases where women do have access to pensions, their benefit levels are usually lower, especially in systems that are based on payroll contributions. Usually women will have contributed less than men because, first of all, they generally have lower incomes and because they usually take time off for caregiving roles. So for example, across the European Union, the gender gap in pensions is an average of 40%. It's flagrant. And a lot of these inequalities stem from the fact that women actually undertake much more unpaid care responsibilities during their lifetimes. And this responsibility is not adequately valued in society. Women actually carry out 2/3 of unpaid care work globally, and this includes older women. Women tend to outlive their male partners, meaning that often they provide a lot of care for aging spouses. They also provide a lot of care to elderly parents, parents-in-law, friends and neighbours. But also, they take care of grandchildren, allowing parents to work. Or in many cases, they actually replace parents as primary caregivers when either children are orphaned, for example, by HIV and AIDS, or where children are left behind in the context of migration. Yet, despite this support, their contributions remain largely unrecognised by social security systems and society at large. Another example, in the US, for example, they estimate that the value of the informal care that women provide for free is worth $188 billion annually. And we see that with the COVID-19 pandemic, this care burden has intensified. It's also meant that support services have decreased or have been taken away completely. So where before carers would have had maybe part-time support in the home or supported day centres, this has been taken away. We also see that with the high incidence of severe cases and deaths from COVID occurring among older men, it means that older women are having to either face the loss of their partner with economic consequences, or they're having to take on the additional burden of caring for partners who have complications. In addition to the role of women as care providers, the adequate provision of care for dependent older women is also an urgent issue. A significant proportion of older women live alone. Over twice as many women over 60 live alone compared to men. So women also account for the vast majority of people in need of long-term care, in part because they live longer on average, but also women are actually less likely than men to have a spouse or partner to care for them when they need it. Women tend to marry or cohabit with men who are older than them, and they also have lower rates of remarriage. So ironically, women who often spend a lifetime caring for others end up poorer because of it, and also have no one to rely on when they themselves need support. Also, we've seen from the pandemic that it's highlighted a degree of neglect in care homes, again, where residents are predominantly female. We've also seen evidence with the pandemic of aggravated dementia. And again, worldwide, women with dementia outnumber women 2 to 1. And lastly, there's an issue that needs to be mentioned. It's the gender digital divide. Again, during the pandemic, we've seen a reliance on digital tools that's growing, not only for education and employment, but also generally for access to information, for public services, and also just for keeping in touch with each other and being part of society at large. However, the gap in digital skills is significant among older persons, and in particular, older women. 52% of women globally are not online, either because of lack of access or because of lack of digital skills, and they're thus excluded from modern society. And most of these are older women. And if this gap isn't addressed, they will become increasingly marginalized from modern society and will not have access to vital digital services. So these are the broad range of issues that exist. And so we see that there's a need for a policy response that does take into account the specific needs of older women. Now, the COVID-19 response and recovery packages are actually an opportunity to establish these kinds of policies. So in the short term, social assistance programs that support widows and older single women economically, such as cash transfers, can make a big difference, as can ensuring support services for care providers. We also need to look at the longer term needs of older women. In the long term, the global population aged 60 plus is expected to more than double by 2050, and most of that population will be women. And actually the number of people in both the 60 to 79 and over 80 age brackets is higher in low and middle income countries than in high income countries. So it will need to become a priority in those countries, especially as demographic shifts mean that perhaps the traditional care systems we've heard about today may decline. So there is a need to tackle discrimination faced by women at all stages of their lives. If we look at education opportunities, employment, their role in childcare and caregiving, and during retirement in terms of pensions, policies are required throughout their lifetimes to empower women so that they're less vulnerable in later stages of life. There's a need for law and policies that recognise and value the significance of unpaid care work, but also we need to invest in redistributing that work. This means providing public care services and also promoting the share of domestic and care work between men and women. We also need to look at transforming pension systems. Something that we promote within UN Women is universal social pensions. This is a tool for providing basic income security and closing gender gaps in pension coverage. It's essentially establishing the right to an old age pension for all elderly, women and men, independent of their employment history and family status. And in some countries, we also need legal reform that looks at the rights of widows to have equal inheritance and property rights. And lastly, we need to look at ways to promote social inclusion. This includes access to lifelong skills, such as digital skills, which would allow older persons to benefit from new technologies, digital services, access to information, and also to remain connected to society and to family, which we've seen during the past few months is becoming critical. But digitalization also offers actually great opportunities for community participation and for self-determination for people in their old age. So we need to see more investment in these skills. And lastly, just to echo what Rosalind said, it's critical to invest in the work of civil society, in particular community-based groups who provide widows and older women with support at the local level and also challenge the discriminatory social norms that they often face. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laurie. I must echo that discrimination of women need to be tackled right from, right from very early years and in all areas of their lives, so that this is not aggravated or, manifested in their older years. Now I'll go back to Nigeria to bring in Dr. Ogugwa Osiogu. Ogugwa, are you here? Can you unmute yourself? She may be, I don't know, she may be having some technical difficulties. While we are still on civil society matters before we go to global.
She's there, VC.
You see? Yes, I would like to bring in Sylvia. Yes, Sylvia.
No, Oguga is there. I think she's there, and now she unmuted
not
herself.
able to unmute herself. I don't know what's the issue.
Oguga, maybe you want to talk?
Hi, VC. I apologize for that.
Okay, you're welcome. I know you've been at a burial ceremony. Hello, Google. Hello, Google. Okay, to save time while she's
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but
this was to start. Apologize. So yes.
I think
Let me try a different location. It looks like.
Ugo, can I come back to you? She's right in a very remote area, so she may be having, she's not in Abuja, so she may be having difficulties connecting. Sylvia. No, before I go to Sylvia, I'd like to go to Astrid. Dr. Astrid Stogerberger is a coordinator, president of one of the NGOs here in Geneva. She will be able to bring us the perspectives from this part of the world. Astrid, are you online?
Yeah, I'm online. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Is the sound okay?
Yeah, it's okay. We can hear you.
Okay, well, thank you, BC. There were very interesting interventions, so I will try and link it to that too. The challenge today is big because BC, you squeeze a lot of important people, and we have just 10 minutes, and you have squeezed also very important topics: healthy aging, SDG, and COVID-19. And I will start with COVID-19. I think why? Because from a public health perspective, and as we're going to talk about healthy aging, it is a game changer. It's like a revelator of what works and doesn't work for old people. Yeah. And there has been, and I think that we really needed already a recommendation to analyze deeply what happened with old people in this whole COVID-19 epidemic, pandemic, post-pandemic, which is already in Europe, and what's going on between science, technology, and policy. Because that's what I want to say first, is what it shows is first a lack of knowledge of old people. It's been already underlined by many in Nigeria, but it's also here. It's everywhere in the world. The data is old, sorry to say, but that's in a pejorative negative way. And I'm not against old, I'm on the opposite, so I don't want to be making discrimination on words. But there is a lack of knowledge on old people that is so shocking that I wrote myself a few articles, and I can tell you one is a scientific. It is that what we are saying about aging on general and generalizing old people as the vulnerable group is a complete discrimination. Because what they're doing, even in Switzerland and everywhere in the world, is saying that old people, which is 60 plus from the UN perspective, now it's a bit more 65, and some countries it's the retirement age, some countries it's other parameters. It means that the whole group of 65 plus, let's say, is in the same situation of being the vulnerable group, that we have to take care of the poor of them. They cannot take care of themselves and they're going to die. So what happened is, with the message of risk communication, which I will come back to, is that those people started to fear unnecessarily. And the scientific message was very contradictory. On the opposite, it is not old people. It is just biomarkers, and we have to take biomarkers, and that's the new science that will take it, because biomarkers of age are not the same as chronological age. There is not even sometimes a correlation between both of them. So what we do is that what they're saying in the COVID-19 is that the vulnerable groups are male, sorry, but there are more men than women dying this time. Maybe they don't take care enough of their health and their prevention. We'll come back to that. And then there is comorbidity. So it's people with comorbidities, which is, for example, in the US, because of the epidemic of obesity, is a huge group of all ages. It's not just old people. And old people don't all have comorbidities. So this is the first thing where you mistreat people from a wrong message of risk communication and a wrong science of demography. And that's where I want to come to the second point, is that the COVID showed that they don't consider the heterogeneity of aging, and the fact that you go into life, we know by science, that you have a cumulative change and heterogeneity of genetic expression of epigenetics. And the people in old age are very different, the one from the other. Women, men, and are even making more and more discrepancy and standard deviations. So we have to take this group as typologies of aging, but definitely not put them all in the same basket and say that that's it, they're declining, they're going down, and they're lost. You see, this is actually mistreatment from a demographic point of view, because when you look at the demography, in transition of demography, the aging population is everywhere in the world. Life expectancy is a very bad indicator. It's a mean. It is not at all showing the number of old people in the country. And in Africa, for example, Sierra Leone or other countries have had wars, have had like Rwanda also genocide, or have had HIV, who killed a whole generation. So the life expectancy goes down, but it doesn't mean there are no old people. So the demographic discrimination of heterogeneity shows that we don't have the right picture of the distribution of old people in society, and orphans and old people are taking care of each other in some countries because of that. So it's just that how science is not enough. It is the explanation and the engineering of data and science, which is the key for not discriminating. And then I can go on and on about this, but I want to say maybe two more things. The science today is completely changed. And it's not only science, it's technology. So when I hear people saying, oh, he's losing his memory, it's normal. Oh, it's normal that he's declining. It's absolutely wrong. Yeah. It's epigenetic data has shown that 75% is not determined by your gene, but by the expression of your gene, what you do every day. And every day is subjective perception, chunk of factors, lifestyle, nutrition, exercise, and then environment where you live. And if you live in a city with pollution, and there has been more death in the cities with pollution than others, and then all this is actually shaping up a new scientific paradigm where, when you don't know, you mistreat and neglect by ignorance. I call it like that. And we have to, in the future, we have to really make our homework on the science, and also how family has changed completely. The typical ideal family that is all together, living under the same roof, and happily ever after is absolutely wrong. There are divorces have increased. Women have taken independence, good and bad. The families are from a second nest, half brothers, half grandmothers. So people in healthcare are lost with the how to deal with the family care. And this also has to be said. And I come down to the situation with policy. And policy is actually a victim or a portrayer of this. And we have to really address this in the SDGs, all what I say, and in the MIPA, in the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging, in 2020, we will have the third World Assembly on Aging. I was in the second, and I've been participating with the UN, all the time on the rights of older people, on all this. And I can tell you, I have denunciated one thing that is very important, and it's the same with the International Health Regulation on Pandemics, is that old people are not mainstreamed, budgeted, or taken into consideration in most agencies. Go and look at older refugees, older migrants, older women and UN women. I'm sorry, I have already said that to your director. It's really appalling compared to the immensity of the issues to take in hand. So I'm calling the UN to say, now put a budget. It's not just WHO with a budget. It is a budget for every agency. Work, aging and work, aging migrant, aging and economy, aging and ITU. I was on a panel with cybersecurity and seniors, because the abuse of seniors in the old generation is absolutely crazy. They are not connected. They are using a phone with Wi-Fi to pay. In some countries who are jumping over the optic fiber, and in Africa, you're very good at adopting technology very fast. But this is a new site of abuse. And you have to really be quick in policy to make sure that internet, cybersecurity, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, which is there already, has to be secured for all people. So this is a whole new subject. And to finish, I was working 3 years for the International Health Regulation with WHO in preparedness plans. I was with Europe, with governments for 3 years, training and science. And I can tell you that this COVID-19 shows how badly prepared and how badly we are, the governments have obeyed to what they signed, because they all signed the International Health Regulation, which obliges governments to have preparedness plans to not be in the situation we have today, and to protect the people. There's a human rights article on protecting the people from economic failure, and the businesses too. And what we're seeing is a real holdup on people. It is not even, the Syracuse principle is not even correctly applied, and it's not even right. So I denunciate this in documentaries and things and articles, but I just wanted to say that as a finish. COVID is a big change, and we can take the opportunity to improve the world and improve the rhetoric, the narratives, the science, and the policy. And thank you, BZ, for organizing this.
Thank you so much, Astrid. I love the dimension you brought into it. We were actually discussing about the technological divide with respect to older persons, but you now introduce another angle to it, which is the cybersecurity. I personally didn't think about that. So we really have our work cut out for us. It's true that the government have been unprepared to be held accountable. They never envisaged a pandemic like COVID, which has really exposed the failure in planning and policies. Without taking much time trying to recap what you've said, as we are going to have that in detail later on, I would now like to bring in a global perspective to everything we've discussed today. I will introduce Sylvia to give us an insight into what is happening at the global space. Sylvia.
Thank you. Thank you, BC. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you for the previous speakers. And I think I could take something. I do not want to repeat things, but I would like to endorse several things that each one is said. Of course, the gender dimension. And I totally agree with Astrid that the UN does not put enough into the programs on what we are very good and not even that good into defining what the problems are, but we are less even, we are very bad in really putting the money where our words are. But not everything is negative, although really, as we said, that COVID has really put a spotlight on older persons, and it has not created ageism, not created the problems. It has only demonstrated how badly it can go when countries do not have adequate policies, when the world doesn't have adequate policies, and when societies discriminate to the extent that older persons are discriminated in society today. And what we see during COVID is simply a result of decades of a completely abandonment of the topic. But I'm saying that not everything is bad, because things are happening, and it really depends on us, older people, to make sure that more will happen and that we do not let it go. If people want to call me opportunist, I am opportunist, and I think we need to be. I think that we have the duty to take this opportunity in order to act and improve the situation of older people. I mean, we have been even demonized, even blamed for the for the pandemic, even, you know, claiming that it's our fault that young people cannot enjoy life, even saying that everybody above the age 65 or 70, as was in some countries, cannot leave the house, assuming, as you know, as you said, that everybody is the same, even not enabling older people to do the volunteer work that they want to do, that we want to do. Really, closing us in the homes is sometimes more dangerous than the disease itself. What is killing us is not just the virus, is really the way that we are being treated, that is not just killing us, literally, but also really increasing the morbidity, decreasing the cognitive function and mobility and will to live. But as I said, for the last decade, there has been, since the decision of the General Assembly on the needs of the open-ended working group on aging, to discuss whether there is a need for a convention, a UN convention on the rights of older persons. Now, the debate has been extremely polarized between the governments that are very much supportive of a convention on the rights of older persons and those who say we don't need a new instrument. The problem is an implementation gap. As opposed to them, they say there is an implementation that older persons are included in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and in other treaties that really, if the CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination against Women, for example, should include women. In fact, there is even a general comment on women. However, very little is very little focus is given to older women in the committee. The same happens with economic and social and cultural rights. Less than 1% of recommendations, of reports, of countries, or of the committees, less than 1% deal with older persons. This is not something that is sustainable, that is tenable, that we cannot carry on like that. And as Dr. Eze said something that really resonated with me, he said, everybody's business is nobody's business. And this is what happens. When you say a topic is something that belongs to everybody and everybody should deal, when there is no specific mandate, nobody deals with it. And that's why we feel also discriminated by not having a specific convention that really deals with a specific discrimination that older persons suffer. Sometimes are the same, or sometimes are intersecting, and sometimes are the result of life course, but sometimes there are also discrimination that is even stranded in law in countries, like determining what age you have to stop working, or what age you stop getting some care or preventive care or even screening for some diseases. These are discrimination. This is really legal discrimination that we need to abolish. And in order to deal with those issues, we do need specific reporting. We need a specific convention that would give countries the standards that would enable them to design policies that are human rights based, that we stop treating older persons as a blanket group and we start treating older persons as full rights holders like everybody else and not just recipients of care or even charity. We are not that, and we can participate. We want to participate. That's why yesterday I said in another webinar, we want to sit at the table, do listen to us. We need to participate and help governments into designing the policies that are good or that respond to what we need and want. Because governments have an obligation to respect, protect, and fulfill the rights of older persons. And what COVID has shown us, that they have failed in the three aspects. They have not respected, they have not protected, they have not, and definitely don't help to fulfill. And, but as I said, so the opportunity now is to convince more governments on the need. Because which are the governments that are against or have been against the convention are generally the rich countries, are the donor countries, those who say we don't want to spend more money into another committee, into another, into more formal instruments. We say to those countries, shame on you that, that we are told that we are less important. Yesterday, I want to say that it was painful when we were celebrating 30 years of the International Day of Older Persons. UN Women had at the same time an event at the General Assembly for Beijing +25. Of course, it's very important. I am the first supporter. Of course, it's important that we have to support each other all the time, but we do not have to compete with each other. And by putting us on the same place with the participation of the Secretary General and other very important people, it puts us immediately into a second place. And we are contesting that. And what also, as I said, COVID shown us is that we have a voice and that we are voicing it more strongly. And that's why we are advocating, we are saying enough is enough. And we are really interacting with the Secretary General. He issued a policy brief that was very much human rights based with the help of civil society, who was behind the scenes working with other organizations, making sure that his office would not release something that is not human rights based. With other organizations, we are working, for example, on a program. There is a program work now going on in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. It's a joint program in order to improve the preparedness of older persons in emergencies, in order to improve care, to make sure that care is individualized and person-centered, and to change the narrative, and to focus all the treatment of older persons with a human rights base, and to finish, and as what they are doing in Latin America, a campaign now with cut it out, stop discrimination. And for that, we need to work together, but that is not just the analysis, which we need, but it's also, as I say, work with us, not in our name, with us. And I think I will leave it there later, because I can also give some addresses how we can improve and how to make those links between the national level and the global level. And there are many important things that people can do from the countries to participate at the UN in the human rights mechanisms, because the countries civil society can send shadow reports when the committees are debating specific countries, when the Human Rights Council is dealing with our topics, and now the Human Rights Council does deal with our topics every session every September, because our independent expert, we have an independent expert on the rights of older persons, and every September, not only she presents a report, now we have the second mandate, a second person with a third mandate period, and talks about thematic reports, but also on country visits. And that's very important, that we make sure that our country can invite our independent expert, but also that we can also participate when other independent expert or other special rapporteur visits our country, to make sure that they also meet with older women and men, and not just with young women, or not just with migrants, and not just with young LGBT, because older people include everybody. And that's why we need to work together and be included in all the debates, not just in issues of care, but in decision making, that in topics that are relevant to all of us. I think probably I leave it there, and I'm very happy to respond to more questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. It is indeed important to get that inclusive debate, intergenerational, whereby everybody is on the table discussing and working with older person and not in their name. Dr. Siobu is back on, and I hope our connection is very clear now. Ogugu, are you able to join us?
Yes, I am. Hopefully the connection is sustained. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Great. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Let me, okay. Thank you, BC, for having me join this very important conversation. And I was supposed to be talking about age-friendly health systems and measures to promote healthy aging. It's been very interesting listening to some of the previous speakers, and I'm glad to ensure that the older adults have a space, in left behind. Very quickly, sometimes we all think aging starts at 60. We used to think it would start from birth. But now, that aging begins, which a future person ages, and what phenotype eventually becomes. Is aging a disease? No. And government, I must say, have dealt with aging as a disease. Yes, it is a big risk for disease conditions, but in of itself, it's not a disease, and we all have to pay attention to that. What rights do older persons have? Every right rights to medical care, every right like a child would have. So when we talk about aging, it is a continuous complex that ends with death. Of course, I guess everyone is concerned about the ultimate, if we live a healthy lifestyle from utero. So what is conceived age. Why are we concerned about the trend? In 2015, those were put 900 by 2050. At what time would have children? So healthy as we age. For us, older.
I think we lost Google there.
Yeah, I think you can ask her to switch off her video. It might be clearer.
Yeah, that probably could help. Yes. I'm sure she's trying to rejoin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear. Yes, Oguga, do you want to
turn off my video, right?
Yeah, that might help. Yes.
Take your video off.
All right. Yes, I did that. Thanks, Anita. Okay, great. Multiple. So we have to pay attention to those as we all go through the life course as individuals. And there are multiple strategies that studies have shown us that help us to age better. Most of them related to lifestyle. Being able to participate in routine physical activity. We expect that everyone should do at least 150 minutes minimum of quick-paced walking on a weekly basis. So that equates to about 30 minutes being able to eat fats and carbohydrates, and you're avoiding toxins such as tobacco, excess alcohol, excess. You know that a lot of our older adults, 9 as we might think them to be. We talk about everyone knowing their numbers, and those numbers are pressure, your blood sugar, your body mass index. We know that all of this contributes cardiovascular.
You are muted, BC.
Thank you, Sylvia. I think we just have to go on without Ogugwa. She may be able to join us later on. Let me open the floor very quickly for questions as time is running out. I see some questions here in the chat, but I would like to give people the opportunity to ask the questions directly themselves. Questions? Hello, everybody. There is a question here on aging with disabilities, because their suffering may begin earlier than for other older persons. Is there any of our speakers who would like to touch on that?
Could you repeat, please, the question?
Yes, you know, the concern for older persons with disabilities, because they suffer from a different kind of, they suffer differently from their counterparts, and they have their issues are different. What is the provisions in terms of policies and interventions
May
happening? Yeah.
In some considerations, everybody, when they get older, at some point may have some kind of disability, okay? And in that sense, on human rights basis, they would be covered by the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, but not everybody is, and not everybody knows. Older persons don't even know that they would be covered by the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And one of the reasons is that in many countries, they are separate administrations for persons with disabilities and for older persons. So in many countries, even in Europe, happens that when you reach the age of 65, you lose your benefits or your right to have specific assistive devices, and then you have to move to a different kind of administration that deals with older persons, where almost by definition, you get less. So indeed, the issue of aging, whether you age with a disability or whether you acquire a disability in older age, is an extremely important topic. The WHO is working on a report on assistive technologies, and in that there will be a specific chapter on the issue of older persons in need of assistive devices. And assistive devices can be from glasses to artificial intelligence. And the point is that as we age, we all need some kind of device or tools that can enable us to carry on functioning. And the problem is when we do not have access to even sometimes the most simplest devices, then we are considered a person with disability. Another topic that is important to know, that sometimes families, with the wish to protect the person, then the person is confined to their homes rather than being an older person with a neurodegenerative disease, for example. They are confined to the home because either they want to protect them either from falling or from having an accident or from getting lost, and therefore their situation becomes of enclosed at home. And this is something that also belongs to the field of human rights, that we need to assist or enable people to carry on functioning in the community with or without a disability.
If I may just add also, there are a lot of people also who have natural disabilities, some blind, deaf, those who have issues with their limbs, who are not able to walk, who crawl, and those who by accident have become persons living with disability. For example, in my country here, a law has been passed in their favor on things to do for them, but it's all on paper, no action on the ground, no support on the ground. And so we also found that the SDG initially did not include them. They were not included in the SDG programs, even though efforts have been made now to include people living with disabilities or people with disabilities and older persons. So you find that those with disabilities are still not effectively being covered. And when there are discussions about older persons, we have failed to segregate between the normal older person who is growing old, but his disability is due to age, and those who have had disabilities getting old. You know, a lot of people are on wheelchairs and all that. So I think it should become a UN issue, you know, to particularly recognize this class of people, and the Sustainable Development Goals needs to capture them more effectively, universally. Thank you.
If I may say something, Senator, the SDG Goal 3 actually aims to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being of all at all ages. So when we talk about a life course goal, I think that should take care of it. I think here again comes the issue of the implementation gap. I think that's what we should be hammering on: the implementation gap, the problems with the policies, the government policies, and their inabilities to capture, you know, all members of the society without leaving anyone behind. I think for me, that's what I would contribute.
Well, I think it goes more than that, because in my opinion, you need to, we're beginning to talk about older persons because we're specifically recognizing the older person as being in the group of vulnerable people. Now, within the vulnerable class, there's also the need for you to specifically recognize the different groups of vulnerable people. You have men, you have women, children, and older persons. And within the older persons class, if you do not segregate, you will not target and you cannot administer. So I think that the issue of people living with disabilities goes beyond, you see, because when the SDG says leaving no one behind, they are not specific. If you, so far, older persons have been left behind, people with disabilities have been left behind. So it is important for us to recognize that they have properly been left behind and target them. It is only when you have policies and programs around them that they can, you know, be included. Thank you.
If I can say something, Busy, I just want to add my experience with the Committee on Aging. In the beginning of the 2000s, with around the UN Assembly on Aging in 2002 in Madrid, there was a lot of discussion on the Convention on Aging and the Convention of Older Persons. And the excuse that is still today given not to take care of a convention of old people is the Convention on the Right of Disability. And it is really, again, it's a knowledge problem and a scientific analysis, engineering, social engineering, policy engineering problem. Why? Because I have this problem often in research when people or the disability group is coming and say, oh, we have the same problem for access to mountains, to rural areas. And I say, no, not at all. Because one parameter clinically that you have to study is that the big problem in clinics today is frailty. And frailty is not something defined in disability. And they cannot even walk on a sidewalk with cobblestones and they can triple down. It's not disability, but they consider this as disability. Another example is, for example, in Switzerland, once you pass the threshold of old age, retirement, and you get a hearing problem, they only pay you one ear. You have to be disabled to have 2 hearing aids paid. So they consider this like a half problem. And it is, again, the budget goes to disability and there's nothing for old people. So it's just an example of how policy is engineered not to take care of old people. I'm sorry, I'm very
I agree.
upset with this.
I agree with Astrid on that. And as I said, you can be old with a disability, but also not, the majority of older persons do not have a disability and they are not covered by the CRPD. But the one important point is that the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disability in their first article says that somebody has a disability if one identifies him or herself as a person with disability. And as Astrid said, many of us will not identify ourselves as having a disability, and we want to be treated as an equal. And having a convention on older persons doesn't mean that we are segregating. It means that we are ensuring that older persons can fulfill their rights like everybody else, not to separate. However, Eze is correct that if we do not put an emphasis on specific programs into older persons, nobody else will. And that's why it's not a question of segregation, it's a question of focus and to invest where the investment is needed, and we need it.
I'm just wondering,
yes.
Because maybe categorization might help what we're talking about now, because generalizing and putting even people that are in their early 60s, you know, from 65 into the same basket as somebody who is 80 or 90, the needs are different. Could that be something that could help with policy formulations and definitions and designs of actions and interventions?
Yeah, of course, because you can even see with COVID, it's the 80 plus who are sick. It's not the 60.
Yeah.
Hello?
And also, I just want to add one small thing. Oh, sorry. It's that disability in the aging is temporary, or it is progressive and regresses and progress like Alzheimer's disease. It is linked to a pathology, not always just functional or sensorial. And it's polydisability that has to be managed. So it's a very different picture. And by describing it, you can see it very clearly. But you have to describe case studies, and I think clinicians are good at that.
Just to add,
contribute to something briefly, especially with respect to disability and functional ability. And it is a mix, because we tend to get confused with respect to older persons who have a challenge of functionality. So we need to get a way of measuring functional ability, then sieve it out of disability. Then we are able to get the right intervention for the right people. And I'm happy to explain this because, for example, many of the African nations, as Rosalina had mentioned earlier, had not embraced the fact that disability is supposed to be measured. But for example, Kenya has adopted this as part of their census measurement tools, that we have to measure the disability and functional ability using the right tools. The second thing is the fact that if you look at the life course, from childhood or infancy to some for possibly 50 years of age, you'll find a lot of studies are being done by students at the universities, and they attract a lot of attention. But as soon as these ages hit 60, no one is. So we need to get a motivation so that many of our universities also invest much in research on older persons. Thank you.
Yeah. Just to add, one thing is that also the issue around things that can increase disability, like eye care related, is not well invested in. And there's one time we were implementing a project with site savers, and they were doing eye care related work, and most of the, actually 90% of the people they were doing cataract were actually older persons. So there's something that we need to do, that apart from just providing assistive devices so that we can minimize disability, we need to invest more in certain areas like eye care, but also in terms of their activeness, especially in terms of men, in terms of employment, because as soon as they are not very active, then they are likely to, their health would deteriorate, and then we'll have more disability. But I know, Jen, you have heard, and I know I have also talked with Dr. Kabuye, is that as you age, as you increase, as you become older, and you are benefiting from disability-related provisions, when you get older, your disability also increases. That means that the grants or the support that you normally receive is not sufficient enough to cater for the increased disability at older age. And this has not been adequately addressed. And maybe these are the things that we really need to speak about and ensure that our governments are considering that that the provision of disability when you're younger is not adequate or sufficient to support you when you get older, because you would need additional support or additional support because of additional complications in your day-to-day activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosaline. I saw an hand up. Christine, are you still there? Christina, she had raised up her hand and then she put it down. Would you like to ask your question, Christina?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'll just, I'll go ahead and ask my question. I was wondering, because you've all talked about the different subcategories in when you look at aging, and I was wondering if, I don't know, because I missed the first part of the talk, so I don't know if you talked about, older people with psychiatric problems, because that's what we've just been talking about. It's something I think that's very, very, should I say, it's more played out with older individuals with psychiatric problems, whereby you not only have the problem of human rights issues, where you can ask, there are issues of their capacity of discernment, so they cannot decide for themselves, and all the attitudes we've described about ageism, we see it being played out even more intensely in this group. And so I was wondering, especially in other countries, because I work here, I'm a clinician in a geriatric hospital here in Geneva, Switzerland. So I wonder how it is in developing countries where you probably do not have the kind of health care that they have here. And if we're seeing that there are lots of problems here, how would it be in other places? I would like if the speakers can speak to this issue. Thank you.
It would have been nice if Oguga could speak, as she's a geriatrician. Oguga, can you hear us? Yeah, she would have, helped us to shed light on that. Dr. Ize, do you want to say something on that? What's your experience? Anyone else who want to, to respond to that?
Well, I see those with dementia and Alzheimer's and those who have psychiatric case as in the same category. And in my country, there are no policies, no programs towards them. And except that some people are kept in mental homes, and some people are chained at home, and some people are locked up at home so that they won't wander away or go on the street being seen as mad people. But it is something that as a nation or as organizations, we should begin to try and come up with policies towards these people. You know, like I said before in my presentation, the issue of older persons is diverse. You have all sorts, you know, somebody who has been blind all life until he becomes old, or somebody who has never walked before, has been on wheelchairs and then gets old. You see that their needs will be higher, yet no organization, no government has a program towards them. So aging without support is a big issue.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. That sums it up. Aging
Yeah. Yes. Can I add my voice?
Yes, please.
Yes, to what was going. Thanks very much for the physician from Geneva for raising a point about the policies and differences in age. I'm Charles Senesi, I'm a physician myself. I've worked in low-income countries, and I do mobile clinics all over Africa, West, Central, South, etc. And we see lots of these cases. But mind you, the population dynamics in the West, we have more elderly people, so there are lots of policies. In the low and middle income countries, the population of the elderly is quite small because they don't live long enough to that old age. But despite that, even if 2 or 3 of them, they still have the right to health. So I see this as a call to call. The disease conditions, of course, are totally different in low and middle income countries compared to the West, where we all practice, but we still do our thing down there. So I think we have to appreciate that the disease is different, the population dynamics are all different, and we should put dynamically for policies in low and middle income countries, taking the experience of the West. Maybe in the running up, I will give more. I think that's what I can give as an input. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Senesi. Any of our speakers wants to go around? I also have somebody who also works in that field here in Switzerland from Bern. She actually wanted to say something. Doreen, are you still here?
Yes, I'm still.
Yes. You want to tell us from your experience, what is the situation? At the beginning, Dr. Eze compared traditional and institutional care. And from his submission, there are problems and challenges with both. In the past, we have this notion that traditional care is probably better than institutionalized care. But then it brought the dimension of untrained staff, people not really caring, genuinely caring for their patients, the carers. So do you have anything to say on this? What, from your experience, what would you say?
Okay, thank you, Dr. BC, and greetings to everybody. My name is Doreen Bieri, originally from Cameroon, and the founder of the CN Foundation while volunteering with the Afro-European Medical Research Network. I actually work in Bern in the field of geriatric, and going back to where I come from, I think ageism, if I would compare it to my community in Cameroon first, it is really something nobody has, or so many people have never thought about it. I have to argue with my own people to tell them, there is an old mother here. It is not that she does not want to listen to what you say, but she has reached a stage where she has the right to forget. And back to our communities, many people don't understand why the elderly people have to forget information they give them so fast. Families get so angry and upset because their mothers could not replicate what they wanted from them. They have just forgotten. And owing again to the community in Cameroon, I witnessed a lot of incontinence, which is something nobody ever talked about, or maybe some have talked about in one corner, but our parents get so ashamed of themselves. Working here as a geriatric nurse and seeing what goes on here, if we look at the institutional care, sure, it is something that has to do with the cost. And it is also, we have a lot of untrained staff, but they have at least the basis to take care of these people. And ageism here, I think Dr. Stockenberg, she did make mention sometimes, sorry, I may have pronounced it wrongly, but I didn't get the name quite right, but Stockenberg, Astrid. So she made mention of the concept of family. The concept of family years back was a family where our parents get old with us at home. But that is not the concept of today. And what I live in the institution is the older these people get, the more they lost the contact even with their own family. So care for these old people, it really depends on what you have or how you did manage that from the beginning. And more often the understanding from the perspective of the family also counts. But so many of them are neglected. If I look at the traditional care, what used to happen, comparing the concept of family, so many of them today in the care homes where I work, they don't have even a child visiting them just because they are old. So many of them, I also worked in the home care, so many of them did not have a family member visiting them. They live in total isolation. And going back to send them into the old home, some of them don't want to go because of the cost incurred in it. So there are really many things that I think the ageism has really been forgotten, not only in the African context, but also in the European context. That is not well looked at. So if I compare both of working like a Cameroonian, working in the Swiss community and carrying on activities back from home, as a whole, ageism is not taken care of. So I think it's something also worth talking about.
Thank you so much, Doreen, for that. I think both approaches have their pros and their cons. We just need to find a middle ground whereby, you know, in Africa, we need support even for people who have, you know, taken care of their parents at home, or better still, take care of their parents in their own homes without taking them out from where they are. Because when you take them out from their homes, you kind of like reduce their independence and dependence on, you know, on their children. Gali Apia from Ghana wants to say something. Gali, can you hear me? Hello, Gali.
Hi, Dr. BC.
Thank you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. I'm really excited being here. My name is Abigail Apia, and I have been a nurse for 13 years at the Ghana Health Service. 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to work in a female ward. And what I was observing was that when the older persons come and they are admitted, 1 out of maybe 100 patients, will you see their family members coming around so comfortably and happily to help with that older person? Most of the time, you see them alone. They'll have to be there by themselves, just go through their pains and whatever, and they die. So it was happening for some time now. Then it occurred to me that, okay, it looks like there's a problem when it comes to the older persons. And when I go outside too, I don't see any kind of excitement in the lives of older persons. So then this informed my decision to form a foundation and see how I can help out with the little I can do for my country. And that's what brought about Guardians of the Grey Masters Foundation. But because of the problem I saw on the ground, there were no laws by the government to help enforce how older persons need to be treated. And it's going to be a long fight. So I was like, okay, before the government can come in, what can I also do? So I realized that the youth or the people now do not have any idea how to go about treating or caring for an older person. I think most of them feel they are diseased. They do not even know that they are even going to grow up to be an older person. I think they see them coming from a different planet. You see, so I was, okay, how do I disabuse these people's mind before they can be pushed to do the needful? So I started with sensitization and education. God being so good, I Googled and I found out the World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and we have International Day for Older Persons. So I used that platform to give education on placards to disabuse people's mind about what ageism is all about. And for 5 years now, that's what I've been doing. Every year I have to do something on social media, in public, for people to understand what is aging, for the young to understand it's a stage they are all coming to, or they are all getting there very soon, what it entails, how they need to take care of their own older persons at home. So I have done this for the past 5 years, and I think that it is working. The government may not be there to, push money into taking care of them. Even if they do, how long is that going to continue? But if the family members themselves are able to get the right knowledge to do the needful for their own older persons, I think that will go far. So the family system is something that we need to hit hard on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gaily, for your input on the situation back home. I'd like to thank everybody for your patience. We've gone past our time, so we don't want to take too much more of your time. So I would like to call on Dr. Senesi to help us round up. A lot of important things have been discussed this afternoon. I'm sure a lot of eyes are also opened. And I hope from the discussion today, a lot of people will, rise up to do more. Over to you, Dr. Senesi.
Thank you very much, our moderator. And thank you so much for walking us through this program. As you said, there has been so much information, which is like a call to action. Because as I said, some of us work here on both ends of the aisle in low and middle income countries, and it's exciting to see us today sharing information both from the bottom-up approach as well as from the global perspective. And indeed, we kicked off with very nice opening statements and to talk of the negative narratives. And our senator indeed homed in on the poor communication, especially for the poorly trained healthcare workers dealing with the aged, and the wrong choices they make because they feel so much isolated. And indeed, we reminded ourselves that we need to have a good infrastructure, especially from the African Union, because I think for aging population in low and middle income countries, including Africa, there's a lot more that needs to be done. So we need to really home in on the powers that be so that they can also come on board, especially when it comes to intersectoral engagement. As Rosalie said, 3% of our women are old. And we need also a huge amount of political will, because we all know that politics makes things go faster, whether you believe in it or as a party or as an individual. And going down the other presentations, we realize that in Africa or in low and middle income countries, 60% of older women have no asset in their name. Although we see the other disparity in this part of the world, in the West, where there is huge disparity between the pensions for older women and men, bearing in mind the women have lower economic income because of myriad of factors. And we home in on the genetics in aging and the need to adequately plan and to make sure we have enough resources so as to target the needs of the elderly, resources being human, material, and financial. And that, of course, the COVID-19 has actually showed the world how poorly prepared we are for the elderly, especially in the high income countries, where we have huge population of the elderly compared to the low and middle income countries, as I was reading the press conference from the WHO Director General for Africa in laying out the facts as why we have low cases in Africa. And then we have also come to realize, as Sylvia said, that we have not actually planned well for the gender dimension because we have not properly defined the problem. And mind you, well-defined problem is synonymous to having 50% of a solution to that problem. So we need to put more of our resources where our passion lies. We need to develop policies that is really evidence-based. And then we seek to bring all parties to the table and sort of not reinvent the wheel, or make sure that we have everybody in place. And then I think there was so much information today that is exciting, as I said, as a call to action. And then we spoke about the SDGs and the homing on the aged. For my side, I can also say that indeed I very well allude to most of the facts that were laid here today. And as a physician, I'm also a researcher, and I work in a clinical trials regulation, I can see that the aged population are in most instances left behind, especially in clinical trials. And so most of the medication, bearing in mind that physiologically after the age of 30, 10% of your organ diminish every 10 years. So by the time you get to 70 or 80, you are living only on maybe negative functional organ or not 200%. So there is a need to really do clinical trials in this population, especially in low and middle income countries. And it's difficult to include them in clinical trials, quite unlike the pediatricians, because most of the aged have got so many underlying cases, so many underlying pathologies. So the pharma industries are not willing to include somebody with on so many medications. So that's when it's a need, it's an urgent call for action. Also, let's bear in mind in the low and middle income countries, such as Africa, the grandmothers are under pressure because, first of all, they are the ones taking care of the orphans of HIV/AIDS, which is endemic in low and middle income countries, including Africa. And in some parts of Europe, such as Eastern Europe, the grandmother are the ones that take care of the children when the young women go out or go abroad to go and get more resources. Some of them never go back. So there are double consequences on these old women. So we need to really have adequate policies so as to upgrade their living conditions. And we need to have a lot more education on them. We talk about digital divide. They need to be properly educated, and the health awareness needs to be increased. I think Joanna is on this forum. I've worked with her in Geneva and in many parts of Africa on that. She's a passion of that. And we need to not only just put policies on them, but bring them closer and have a proper need assessment, which varies from country to country, from community to community, so that we can properly target policies that is really evidence-based for this population. And I think I can go on and on, but that's what I took from this exciting discussion podium this afternoon. And then you will have, of course, a draft summary of the meeting, and then we can have more input where I may have missed. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Charles, for that. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and for your contributions. COVID has provided us with the opportunity to hold all duty bearers accountable. So we all need to just go out there and advocate. Let's go out there, increase the awareness. A lot of people don't even know what it involves to take care of older persons. We need to also work on our government to ensure that all the policies and resolutions that they have signed on to, that they are able to go back and implement, adapt it and translate it to localize it to their context. And on this note, I would like to end the webinar. We'll be sending the recording out as soon as it is ready, and a report, of course. Thank you so much for joining in. Does any of our speakers want to say any last word? Not a last word, a parting word. Does anybody will have something to say before we sign off? Thank you very much.
Busy. Thank you for organizing this. It's great to do that.
Thank you, Astrid.
Very happy.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Roseanne.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi. Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Maybe you can say if you're going to do a report or something.
Yes, we'll do a report. We'll send out the recording as well as do a report, and that will also be sent out, because we need all hands on deck to ensure that we engage our politicians and the government to do what is right and what is expected of them. So on this note, I would like to say enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you so much for joining in.